Hey, so welcome to Rev Up the Digital Series. Today's session will be focusing on remote work, something that's impacting everybody now more than ever. And I brought Dan, Mike, and Christian on today to discuss how they have helped their teams move into this remote work environment, share some workflows, some tech, just best practices that have really helped their teams move into this environment, and also talk about challenges that they faced. It's not perfect. You know, I've got kids at home. It's a daily occurrence where, you know, either there's a video bomb or some kind of crazy comment flying in from a 5-year-old. Keeps everybody on their toes. So just want to kick things off. I'll let Dan, Mike, and Christian introduce themselves after Sean Hester says a quick hello, and we'll just jump into our conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Sean, and thank you everybody for joining us here today. And especially a big thank you to Dan, Mike, and Christian for hopping on here. Now they got some interesting things to discuss here today. And as Sean says, we'll hop into a little bit of a sneak peek into 5.0. I know some of you have seen some of our sneak peeks on social media and in some of the other rev ups and webinars that we've been doing. So we'll take a look at that after these guys get into what they came to speak today on. So again, thank you everyone, and thank you to our speakers for hopping on.
All right, Dan, you want to kick off the intros?
Yeah. So Dan Cesarz, Digital Design Manager with HGA. I've been at HGA going on 9 years now. I started out as a designer in our ACE public corporate practice groups, and then transitioned into the digital design role about 6 years ago after becoming a licensed architect.
Mike Matheny with BKV Group. I've been with BKV about 4 years now, just over 4 years. Kind of led the implementation of Revizto at the firm, and then just been working with our project teams throughout this crazy time that we have going on here, and kind of getting them up board. And you know, we've did some extra training and stuff, and Christian's been a huge part of the implementation since we've been working at home and with our project teams and different practice sites and getting them on as well.
Hey, I'm Christian Kuhn. I'm a BIM manager at BKV Group with Mike. I've been there a little over, well, almost 3 years now. And I actually have a structural background as a structural designer. BKV was kind of, I jumped into the software management side. And yeah, we've been heavily utilizing Revizto, which I'll talk about.
Perfect. Well, why don't we just take this kind of round robin to start, and I'm sure the conversation will flow from there. So Dan, if you could just quickly talk about, you know, how things have changed for your teams and how you've supported them moving into more remote-based work environments.
Sure. So for our digital practice group, the group that I'm in within HGA, didn't really change a whole lot. I think, you know, for a lot of users that weren't familiar with working remotely, supporting them with, you know, a lot of the things that, you know, are really familiar to us, like just VPNing, getting a remote desktop rolling, all those things were kind of big challenges. So from a production standpoint, you know, the software that we use didn't change a whole lot. But I think, you know, if we kind of talk about like the phases of design, things like construction administration, site visits, and then on top of that, you know, winning work, I think were really big changes that we had going into this. Our group is kind of set up to have individual task force that deal with those specific challenges. But I would say some things, you know, were really big changes like that. Producing construction documents, coordination, you know, maybe the format of it changed and that we were just doing everything via the web. But all in all, kind of, for the most part, pretty much the same there.
So yeah, for BKV Group, we had already really fostered a really lax kind of work from home program initially, well, just to begin with. But yeah, working with our 2 IT guys, everybody was pretty much dialed in, so everybody had VPN access. A lot of our users have laptops, so it made the transition easy. But we've really ramped up training as far as our project managers, project architects, with the stamp feature, which I created. We're a holistic firm in-house. We have MEP, structural, architecture, and landscape. So grouping stamps for each discipline to communicate with each other across 4 practice sites in the US and then overseas as well was has really helped us communicate through documentation and just communicating, coordinating, collaborating. It's really easy to get that issue tracker populated. And yeah, I was already making kind of custom video trainings just for known issues in the office or stuff that we needed to get implemented. So it really wasn't too big of a jump, but it was for a lot of our users. Luckily that we were kind of set up for it before all this kind of hit the fan. So.
I think just to piggyback a little bit off what Christian said is our day-to-day users that we're already using or working from home are quite familiar with the workflow and using Revizto as a coordination and communication tool. But we kind of struggle with our project managers, those staff that aren't necessarily attached so much with the day-to-day tasks. And that was a huge part of kind of ramping up our training portion of this, is getting those people on board and understanding what the process looks like, because they're now outside the office, so they're not seeing their team members communicate and collaborate together and stuff like that. So just intertwining them with our current workflow was a big step forward for us.
Great. And Mike and Christian, you mentioned, training. What was effective for you guys as far as getting people on board? Because I know, Sean Hesser can speak to this as well. One of his biggest challenges is bringing new users in. What did you guys do from a training standpoint to kind of bring people in and support them as they got into the platform and other technology?
Well, I think as we adopted Microsoft Teams, that made it a lot easier to kind of create those teams inside of that tool. And we were, using Skype. We'd started integrating the Microsoft Teams platform, assigning tasks and whatnot, creating groups for each project, stuff like that. So it did make it a lot easier to get out a big group of people. And like I mentioned, we're, across the US and DC, Chicago, Minneapolis, Texas, and Vietnam. So that did make it a lot easier to get what we needed in front of people, as far as like screen sharing and getting some kind of format down, and then just tackling it in small groups also helped a lot. So there was a lot of ability to have our users, raise their hand and ask questions throughout, and it really made it a lot easier, a lot more hands-on.
Maybe one thing just to kind of add, like on the training standpoint, we've just found that there's a wide variety of users and the way that they like to receive information. So training and coming up with documentation in different ways, resonates with different users. And I think that's been a critical component to success as well. We've got a training platform called Know at HGA that we use, that we issue videos. It also contains documentation for how to do things within it. And even kind of like this webinar, we do our own internal to help users in a little bit more of a casual podcast kind of manner get through some of these hurdles.
That's great. Now, as people are working more remote, what are some of the challenges you guys have run into? Dan, you just finished, so why don't you jump into that and then talk about, what helped overcome them or what, may still be lingering, just to kind of share the pain with everybody else listening in right now.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, and maybe it's more of a frustration, is feeling like you cover a topic, put out a best practice guide, and you just don't have you get questions about those kinds of things. And I think, putting out a variety of methods for training individuals has kind of been helpful there, like I just said. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm shocked that everything you produce and distribute isn't thoroughly read and understood. That's really surprising to me.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I think if you can figure out the solution to that, you could leave HGA and launch a platform just on that alone. Mike and Christian, any challenges that have been overcome or linger still?
I feel like some users need to really, well, myself included, need to be really hands-on with a lot of new software, especially people like Mike mentioned who aren't in the software daily working on stuff. So some individual kind of screen sharing. We use Splashtop or remote support software, which helps a lot. So we can quick jump on, show them a few things, kind of give them, a quick 15-minute, 5 to 15-minute quick overview of what we went over after we do our coordinated training through Teams. Documenting all this stuff and standardizing it is the other part to that. So we are able to point to specific things that we've outlined that we expect our users to follow, and having that all documented and be available for everybody to see online through our SharePoint site is also real critical, like Dan mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what our biggest challenge was getting people to open up and take a look at the software and different softwares as well, because things did change when we transitioned and worked from home more as a whole entity, as a firm. Lots of staff have always worked from home and understand some of the challenges, but they're used to it and they're used to working this way day to day. But those staff that never work from home and are always in the office working and don't have laptops and aren't used to using those different types of software, they're the staff that get up and go over to a structural engineer's desk and talk through a problem. But then transitioning that to more communication through software was a bit of a challenge, and we're still seeing some of that challenge where we like to be hands-on as an industry, and that's awesome. It's a little tougher at this point, and it's changed the way we work for probably a long time here.
Yeah, I mean, one question I have to add on that, guys, and thank you, because I know that training is important, and obviously, at Revizto, that's something we love to provide. When everyone was kind of mandated, for lack of better words, to work from home, what did you guys do for some of that initial training? You keep talking about hands-on, and I love that. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Did you guys have kind of scheduled trainings in the beginning? Like, hey, we're going to be running through the software, anybody can jump on? Or was it more just-in-time training for individual users throughout the organization?
We kind of cherry-picked who we wanted to get to first, okay. especially with the Revizto side, like the stamp training. That was something that we standardized right away after we'd been working on it, but that's when we really implemented it, because we need that layer of communication that, like Mike mentioned, is gone with the ability to get up and walk over to another user, team member's desk to troubleshoot something. So yeah, that was something that we needed to implement right away, but we didn't have set up. but luckily we'd been talking about it. So that's just one thing out of a million that we needed to train on. So it gave us a good starting point and kind of a good format to follow for anything else that we had to get in front of our users.
Nice.
Yeah, for us, it was kind of priority of training, things that were work stoppage related, and kind of addressing those more directly with project teams, I would say, as we kind of push more and more content to the cloud, going over that transition with teams that maybe have never done that before was a big piece of it. And I think that was somewhat effective because I don't know about how it was working at everybody else's organization, but there was a flood of just all kinds of information. It wasn't necessarily just construction documentation all the time or Revizto all the time. It was, how is this impacting my life, really? So, and to be fair, when I talked about users and not reading things with that flood of information, it was just extremely difficult. So I think being able to figure out what the user needed and trying to target those kinds of things with the project team was kind of essential to success.
Yeah, I think, applying adapting on all fronts. Like you're saying, just sending the information out isn't necessarily the end of the road, especially with, it not just being remote work, but being remote work with, additional challenges of, for me, I've been remote based for years, and now my wife is home and my kids are home. So it's, juggling, 13 different things just to get one email sent out. Has this new environment brought any technology that used to be kind of fringe to the forefront? So, if you guys were, say, dabbling in scanning and you're using that more, or dabbling in VR, has any of that come to the forefront to improve communication?
Yeah, on our side of it, yes, absolutely. I talked about site visits, and I think site visits is one of those big things where, you have limited number of people with access currently, and we've got an internal team trying to look at what's the best method for success for a site visit. And I think, the answer to that question is a question, like it depends on what you're trying to do. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Understanding, what they're trying to get out of it, I think is critical there. We've definitely bought some more devices out of this to try and get more data capture, and give users that aren't able to be there physically kind of the best possible experience in regards to that.
Yeah, I think for us it's the same. I mean, the AR, the VR stuff is still coming, and
Oh, Mike, did we lose you?
well, maybe back now.
You back?
Yep, I think so. So
All right,
I
there
think
you are.
the AR and VR stuff is something that has become more important to the workflow. Revisto is our primary tool to do that within project meetings and stuff, where once again, instead of looking over someone's shoulder at a model in Navisworks or Revit, you're now looking to run that and to try to do that coordination inside of software on a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, or whatever it may be. And that's something that, as a firm, we were very desktop centric, where a lot of our staff were desktop and kind of tied down to their desk to do those types of things. And it's really forced us as a firm to kind of look at that and review that. And this situation is going to move us more towards work anywhere type of situation, which I think is a good. There are definitely some challenges with it as well, but I think we've realized it as a firm that it is a plus, and that our process is going to change a little bit, but we're really looking forward to what it entails, and different softwares and different technologies are going to be a part of that to achieve our goals and maintain the same kind of QA QC control we have on our projects, where everybody's spread out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just to kind of pull on that thread a little bit, you mentioned, change for the good coming out of all this. If you guys could share a little bit of that, I think a bit of the focus tends to be on, what's harder, but, it seems like a lot of customers we're talking to, change is being accelerated, and that can help a lot going forward. So if you could share what you're excited about as we come out of this and move into somewhat, remote / on-site work, that'd be awesome.
As a whole, I think it just opened up a lot of doors for a lot more senior people to embrace a lot more of these communication tools just in general. I know in Minneapolis anyway, when we transitioned back to a office environment, we're still, taking, all the necessary social distancing guideline kind of precautions, but it's going to kind of weed out who's, able to collaborate efficiently through this new, these new procedures and who isn't. And then that'll give us a better idea of, what we need to train on just from the IT side of all of it. I believe we'll have like kind of hotel workstations moving forward before we add, kind of set, seating assignments. Everybody had their own desk. I think all that will change, moving back into, a little bit of normality. But yeah, I think I think it'll be good just as, to get people more acclimated into this more kind of online communication stuff as a whole. So that's always been, I recognize that right away after we first started, going into like a quarantine kind of lockdown situation.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's, it's going to challenge and push new workflows that, we haven't really thought of too much before. We've developed some things AR wise that I think have been helpful to communities, our project teams, and coming up with those new types of solutions. I think that'll end up getting used further down is going to help with, overall efficiency, overall experience really. And maybe the second piece of that is, maybe this might be selfish and maybe it's a pro, maybe it's a con, is not always having to travel. I think, going and making, a 3 or 4 hour plane ride for a 1-2 hour meeting isn't always the greatest thing in the world. And having a lot of solutions, or at least even maybe socially a comfort level with kind of doing these things more remotely, I think is beneficial.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. It is definitely shining light on what is necessary versus unnecessary travel, which, is good for, kind of balance of work and life. The airlines probably wouldn't be happy to hear about it, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. And, just to touch on, what do you feel your teams are missing, or what do you feel is missing from having everybody on, in an office or, able to gather together? Are there, a couple things there that, everybody's like, man, it's really a bummer that we can't do X?
Yeah, I can start. I think like looking at our office layout is very horizontal in Milwaukee, and I mean even in like our Minneapolis office is more vertical. But in any case, like we've got locations where you have these chance / impromptu encounters where you're kind of able to talk about that next thing in maybe a more casual setting, where I think if you're on Skype or Teams or any kind of IMing, it's more intentional to go to someone and ask them a question, where I think it happens more irregular in the office setting and might lead to some things that wouldn't happen otherwise. I think that's a challenge that we'll have.
I think for myself, it's a little bit of that as well. Is you miss being around the conversations that you overhear, right? We all overhear conversations in the office that help us ask questions. If it's a different project with same client, type of thing, and being around those teams and having that one-off conversation, you know, at the getting coffee or just standing up and talking to your neighbor for 5 minutes is something that I miss personally. Just, you know, me sitting work together on a bunch of different stuff and just being able to turn my chair and have a quick 5-minute conversation is definitely something that I miss personally, but I think a lot of them are getting that interaction, and it's going to be different moving forward as far as what that interaction looks like.
And maybe just to take it a little bit further, you know, I think a lot of the problem solving that our group has done in the past, you know, like we had, for one example, we had a project where we had an atrium where this local artist came in, and we wanted to randomly place all these like little origami birds in the lobby area, and we wanted to randomize it. And you know, the project team was just kind of doing this manually, and a member of our team overheard this problem and thought it was a good fit, you know, for a type of a scripted workflow to occur. And those are the types of things that I don't think would happen otherwise. We're not going to hear the problems as casually as we did in the past.
That's all great information. Thank you, guys.